Lovely to have you on again, Mr. David Lynch. It is a pleasure, and I think we're finally getting to the point of the transfer window where things might be starting to look a little bit more bright for us Liverpool fans.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, I always said throughout this transfer window, I think when people have been a little bit nervous about the lack of business, that look, we can only take the sporting director on his word. And if he says things are going to get busy in August, then, you've got to expect that that's what Liverpool are going to do and that's how it's going to kind of work. So, we're fast approaching that now, and that'll be the judgment time. Is what happens in that last little part of the transfer window. And I know there's a lot of things that people want to get done, and I'm sure not everything that everybody wants to get done will be sorted out, but you would expect and hope there'll be maybe some business done, some tweaks to the squad to just give it that little bit of an extra kick, because let's have it right. There's a very good basis of a squad there. It's a squad that won a trophy and was comfortably top four and in a title race last season. But the aim for Liverpool Football Club should always be to kind of kick on from that, shouldn't it? So that it's all about, can they find the right players to do that? And I guess this is the period now where we'll judge whether they actually do that.
Well, as us Liverpool fans, we know who Michael Edwards is. We know all about. He's this mythical figure that we all admire. But what is the real structure at the moment of who's making the final transfer decisions? Is it going to be Richard Hughes, or will it all have to go through Michael Edwards in the end?
I wouldn't expect that, certainly day to day. So it's absolutely not the plan in the future that Michael Edwards will be hands on in transfers for Liverpool. That is going to be absolutely something that is left to Richard Hughes. And I guess, I suppose there's a question mark over whether it will be operating fully in that capacity for this summer, just because of how new it is. Richard Hughes is adapting to a new environment, isn't he? He's just meeting the recruitment staff who have already been there a long time, and just sort of getting used to how everyone works. So maybe we will see, or we'll hear about, that Michael Edwards is slightly more hands-on than he will be in the future for this one. But I don't think going forward that's going to be the case. I think Michael Edwards, his remit is going to be focused very much on the kind of bigger picture stuff. So maybe a little bit more hands-on in this one, but that isn't the plan long term. It's going to be absolutely handed to Richard Hughes, who, Michael Edwards has pointed in, because they do think in similar ways about football and how transfers should work and how recruitment should work. But yeah, it's going to be his baby very much, and he will be given the freedom to do the job, rather than Michael Edwards sort of constantly in his ear and directing things. I don't expect it will work in that way.
I remember when I was researching Richard Hughes initially, when he was being spoken about for the job, one of the things that stood out to me was that he was one of the few players that bought into what Michael Edwards was looking to do from a statistical analysis perspective. And I think it was at Bournemouth, if my memory is right, that they started to build that relationship. And it is incredible to see the journey from both of these guys to where they are now and at the helm of one of the biggest football clubs in the world.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's a big part of Richard Hughes' appointment is that Michael Edwards, as I said, they think in similar ways around recruitment, so the approach in a similar way. But I'd also say about that as well, I think there's a slight misconception about how that whole department works. In that, okay, the numbers guys are back now, and everything's going to be analytics led, and it's not really the case. That yes, you could say it's an analytics led department, but the amount of sort of stock that they put in, also the other elements in terms of genuine old school scouting and watching video, these are all massive parts of it. It's not just about, oh, does he show up well in the numbers, then we'll throw him on the pitch and see what happens. They do put weight into all these things, and it is all about considering various elements. But I remember a conversation I had a while ago with a good source about, sort of Michael Edwards as a sporting director and the type that he is, and it's very much seen as a sort of, he's a footballing sporting director. He's not, the type of work he does is, as much as he buys into the analytics and he wants that to guide him, he still does massively believe in that old school elements and the scouting, as I say in the video. He's not, the kind of bigger picture stuff that he will be involved in now as part of his role, but his background is very much the football stuff. So he understands that. He's not just going, this guy shows up well on the spreadsheets. It goes much deeper than that. And my expectation is that, Richard Hughes and him have met in the past, and as I say, they've got similar thoughts on how this should all work. So I think our expectation should be is that he operates in a similar way. But I do want to kind of assuage those fears that it's all about the numbers, and if they don't add up on a spreadsheet, they won't go against that. it's about considering all the various elements and adding those up with the genuine scouting involved as well. So that will be, as big a part of it really as the numbers are.
So Dave Fallows, Barry Hunter, those type of guys, they're still involved in that process. It isn't just, as you said, we've all heard of Will Spearman coming in and the data analytics. And look, any advantage that you can find in modern day football, absolutely leave no stone unturned. But there is still a bit of old fashioned scouting going on there as well.
Well, that's it. That's the beauty of it as well. Is that if you consider all elements and you are really sort of thorough in each element. So if he ticks the box for the analytics guys, he ticks the box for the scouts who've been and watched him. And you know that when you've got the analytics and the scouting matched up, you're taking out all biases. For example, a scout may go and see a player 10 times, and he might be his 10 good games out of 20, that he plays that season, and that bias is there. But if he shows up well in the analytics as well, then you've got a bigger picture. And then they do the very, very thorough video scouting as well, not just the in-person watching. They watch extra games on top of that to make sure. Then all the background checks as well, which again is another thing that Michael Edwards is huge on. So it's all about mitigating risks as much as you can. Now, they won't always get it right, and I think they would probably look back and think, maybe Navigator is probably the best example of not quite getting it right, even if he was a part of a squad that did really well and played plenty of games. But I still think it is all about those various elements being added together, and I think and like I say, mitigating for that risk. So that's what the approach is really in summary. And I think we'll be seeing kind of more of the same of that really with all those guys having an input into it, and the manager as well in terms of what he needs and what that should look like.
It is good to see that everybody is pulling in the same direction. It's nice to see the recruitment staff put together behind the club. But I wanted to talk about centre-backs, if I may, for a minute, David. So two things on this one. Firstly, Lenny Yoro. What happened there? And also, Mark Gay. Is this a name that you think that Liverpool have interest in? Because I've convinced myself, nobody's told me anything, convinced myself that Mark A is the solution on the left side of that defence. But I'd love to know what you're hearing.
So maybe start with Mark Gay because it's a little bit of a shorter one, just to say that my understanding he's not going to be a target this summer. That to me is probably not surprising either, if I'm honest. I think he's a fabulous player. I agree with you. I thought he had I think he's been brilliant for Palace, and I thought his Euros really showed where he's up to as a player. I thought he did very well, even if England as a whole didn't particularly play well throughout the tournament. But I think profile-wise, maybe not a Liverpool centre-half in the way that this recruitment staff operates. They're so big, aren't they, on having aerially dominant centre-halves. When you are a side that presses as high as they do, the ball is going to come at you long. So you need big, tall, aerially dominant centre-backs, which, you look at Canate, wins his headers. You look at Van Dijk, the best centre-back in probably world football for winning his headers. Quanta very good in the air as well. So that is very much kind of the profile they're looking for, is someone who wins headers. And I think for Gay, doesn't really involve himself in a lot of aerial duels, and win percentage is okay, but not sort of elite level for what Liverpool are looking for. So my understanding is that he's not a target, and I also think that kind of tallies with what we know anyway. And on Lenny Yoro, obviously an interesting situation. I think sometimes we can kind of kid ourselves. When reports come out early in the summer that a player like Yoro is someone Liverpool admire, that they like, that they've scouted and they like the look of him, I think people instantly assume then that player is the number one target. There's no other centre-halves in the world that they like. It has to be him, or there's been a failure there. And the fact is that, all those elements I was talking about that they have to weigh up when they're talking about transfers, that is the price right for us? He's got a year left on his deal. If he comes in and he's earning £150,000 a week, to be basically third choice centre half for us, can we justify that? Are we going to have Jarell Quansah coming to us and saying, well, I'm just as good as this guy, I've just had a breakthrough season in the Premier League, never mind League One. Can I be on 150 grand a week as well? So these are all elements they have to consider. And the fact is, it might be made out that Liverpool missed out, or they were beaten to, or pipped to it. But the fact is, they made the same decision as Real Madrid, which is that at that money, that is not a deal that we wish to do. They made a decision on that, and they might be wrong about that. I will, talk about that till the cows come home. They might be wrong about that. I like to provide insight and background into why that decision was made. But the fact is, it could be the wrong decision. I absolutely accept that. Yoro could go on to be the best centre half in the world. Liverpool could have terrible problems at centre half next season. They could sign someone. They could turn out to be terrible, who's an alternative. These possibilities are all out there. But the fact is, Liverpool looked at the conditions of that deal and thought that amount of money for 1 year left, the wage bill and what that would do to it and the effect it would have on other players, that's not a deal that we want to do. And United's need was greater, so they could go to greater financial lengths to get it done. And as I say, we will find out now whether that was right. We have to wait till maybe the season starts, and we will look if Liverpool were wrong to leave out on going for Yoro, and whether United were absolutely right to get him. But it's hard to judge while the window's still live, I think. And all we can say at the moment is these are the reasons why. Let's see.
I think most of us probably understand the wage part. For 150 grand a week, it's a lot of money for an 18-year-old kid. But I think viewing the transfer fee in its own unique phase, I think 40, 50 million quid has to be looked at from the perspective of what he's worth to us rather than what he's worth with 1 year left on his contract. So we wouldn't be signing him for the length of contract he has left with his club. It would be, is that value for us as a centre-back moving on. So that side of it seems to be where there's been a lot of pushback from Liverpool fans about the price of it. I get the wages, though. I do completely get where you're on.
And that is a fair point as well. Ultimately, if Liverpool had a desperate need at centre half where they thought, well, this kid's going to play for us from next season for the next 10 years or whatever, then he would probably have seen the value in it. But again, I'd come back to the fact that the centre half that they're signing at the moment it's not. I think centre half's a position that they need to look at. I think it's something that this summer, it's probably one of the main candidate areas, isn't it, for them strengthening in the end. But I would also say that, the player who comes in, are they going to be a guaranteed starter? I would argue maybe not. I think Konate's coming into peak age, and I think people forget how good he is because he had a little bit of a poor end to last season. Quansah, I thought, was absolutely fabulous back end of last season. It's what a huge talent Liverpool have got on their hands. And I think Van Dijk, he's aging, he's 33 now, but he's still the best centre back in the world, and I still think you're probably going to get 2 more years at that level as well. So, I get the idea that okay, well, if Liverpool had needed him, then you just spend the money regardless of the year left on the contract. But it's putting all those things together in terms of a year left on his contract. How many games can we guarantee him next season as a starter? Is he immediately better than Konate now? I would argue probably not. Same with Quansah, who's got Premier League experience already and is a fantastic player. So, and obviously Van Dijk's a nailed-on starter anyway. So, I would argue Liverpool's need was a lot less. And so, that's what you have to make the decision on. And the investment is the overall picture. It's not just the year left on the contract, but what is he worth to you at this very moment? And Liverpool didn't think that they wanted to go as high as United. And like I say, could be wrong about that. They could absolutely be wrong about that. They've been wrong about many transfers in the past, I'm sure. But we will see how that kind of plays out now.
One more name I want to throw at you for centre-back is one that I guess would kind of lean into Richard Hughes' understanding and knowledge of Italian football. And that's Dean Huijsen. Excuse my pronunciation. The youngster plays with Juventus, was on loan at Roma. Age profile-wise, 19. I know the club like a group of maybe 100, 150 top-level games before they move for a player. Or it's certainly part of what they look for. Have you heard anything around his name at all?
I can't say that I've stood this one out. I haven't also heard anything to sort of say this is definitely not a target, so I think that kind of rules him in as maybe a player that Liverpool are at least maybe looking at the moment. In terms of whether that, materialises into anything, we'll have to see. But I know, a good example is kind of Ousmane Diomande at Sporting is a player that I know that they've looked at in the past and I think or have looked at recently. And I kind of find that interesting. Are they just is that the profile of centre half they kind of look for? If they've looked at Yoro as well, is that someone who is maybe that 18, 19, 20 in that sort of age bracket who would come in and unlike Yoro, where he'll go to Manchester United and he's clearly expecting games, is he getting paid at a level where he's going to have to play a lot of games, and you would expect him to because their options at centre half aren't fantastic anyway. I wonder whether Liverpool are maybe looking at a profile of centre half who could come in, have a couple of years playing in, as part of a choice of 4 centre halves while Virgil is still there, and sort of get them ready then to almost be a successor and be a couple more years down the line having really great experience once Van Dijk sort of either retires or contract expires or whatever that situation sort of plays out. So I do think that's an interesting link on that basis. Obviously, in terms of whether it will turn into anything concrete, we'll have to see. But I think there's clear evidence we've seen there that young centre half market is maybe something Liverpool are looking at for this summer.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Last time we spoke, we were speaking about Trent Alexander-Arnold and his future and would he sign on. There's been murmurings, and I have to say that because it hasn't been confirmed, but that maybe we're going to see around £300,000 a week, 4 or 5 year deal. Are those the type of numbers that you think are realistic if this deal does indeed come about for Trent?
Yeah, I think it absolutely has to be. I mean, you're looking at a world class player going into his prime years. He's going to be the club captain if he does sign that contract. There's no doubts about that. So, he's the icon of the club really at the moment. So, I think it has to be in that ballpark. I think maybe south of what Salah's on, which is 350. If they can kind of get him there, because he's not a goal scorer and they will always be the top end. But I do think Trent is going to be, that contract's going to be in that sort of ballpark. Obviously, nothing really to report in terms of progress on that. I think maybe people are getting a little bit ahead of themselves with that. My expectation is that if there's going to be a quick resolution to that, it will be once he comes back from his holidays, and they'll do all the interview and the videos and all that sort of stuff that goes with it these days. So no real progress to kind of report on that, unfortunately, at the moment. But yeah, I think those numbers sound kind of realistic to me in terms of what that contract will look like, because yeah, he's that level of player, isn't he? So at Liverpool, if they want to keep him, are going to have to recognise that. And I think, knowing that Real Madrid is sniffing around as well, it's that gives you an extra incentive to kind of bump that money up to basically the levels he will be getting anywhere else.
Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah. The last time we spoke, and you made a really good point that actually made me rethink my thoughts on Salah, that you felt maybe the club would seen value over the course of Mohamed Salah's time there and would be maybe willing to let him leave on a free if they couldn't agree a new deal. Do you think there's any place this summer that any offer can come from Saudi, PSG, or anywhere that would tempt Liverpool into selling VVD and Salah with the contract situations? Now, I do appreciate that an extension would be priority number one. But is there a world where it's possible that either of those two would be sold this summer?
I can't see a world, not because I don't think Liverpool, there would be a number that they could put on it that Liverpool would sell at. I think there's a number on every single player really in most circumstances that they would sell at. And I think even for Salah last summer, when they turned down that huge bid from Saudi Arabia, there would have been a number that could have been got there that Liverpool would have dealt on. I think the reason I know that neither of them are going to leave this summer is that I think neither player is daft enough to leave the money on the table of accepting a move at this point in the contract. The idea for them really is, and I know from sources kind of close to Salah, is the question was asked of him, a couple of years ago. I think, would you accept to move away? Is that anything you'd be pushing for? And it basically was the mood from Salah's camp was, well, why would we ever accept a move when we were in the kind of final year of contract? That would be absolutely stupid, because what that does to the contract on offer, if you move on the alternative is moving on a free transfer and taking an absolutely humongous signing on fee rather than a transfer fee, all comes to you, and then a huge contract on top of that. If you move in the last year of your contract, that money then goes to Liverpool instead, and you get your big contract, but you don't get the huge signing on fee on top of it. So it would be crazy for, even if Van Dijk or Salah were going down the route in their minds of not staying this extra season and pushing for a move anywhere else, it would be crazy from their part to do it, even if Liverpool wanted to sell them. So I don't think that that's going to happen. I think both players, at the very least, even if something disastrous happens and the contracts don't get sorted, we will, at the very least, I can guarantee we'll get one more season out of both at Liverpool. But I think there's real potential for Van Dijk to extend. I wrote a piece this week saying that I think he wants the contract. It's all about, can they find the agreement? And Salah, I've said in the past, I think it's a slightly trickier one because of the numbers involved. But if he's willing to accept a kind of more incentivized deal, then maybe that can get done. But I think the one thing you can guarantee at this very moment is that absolutely Trent, Van Dijk and Salah will be representing Liverpool next season. Obviously, what happens beyond that, we'll have to see how they get on with those contract talks. But that's the one thing you can guarantee. There won't be a sale because the players won't accept it. And why would they?
Absolutely all understandable and fair and balanced, David. Thank you. I want to finish with 5 quickfire questions around some names that our viewers have asked me to ask you about. So George wants to know, has there been any talk whatsoever in Zubamendi or Ederson from Atalanta?
Edison, I got a very kind of cool response on in the early days of the window. So I know is being pushed on kind of the players' side, that there's someone Liverpool have looked at, but I've never really had encouragement on that name. Obviously, whether that will kind of change and things will heat up around him maybe later in the window, but just from what I was told early in the window, it didn't feel to me like he was someone who was targeted. And Zubimendi, another interesting one, obviously a good player in a position that Liverpool would like to strengthen in. Again, did he see him as the fit? I'm not sure, but I haven't personally heard on anything on Zubimendi, so can't rule him out, but can't really rule him in. But I think he's an interesting name, and I think the thing is with the Houlden midfield is that look, there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Liverpool. Sorry, this is quick fire questions, by the way, isn't it? There's no doubt whatsoever that Liverpool would like to sign a world class Houlden midfielder. They were all over Tchouaméni before he went to Real Madrid. They loved him. They wanted to sign Caicedo last summer, so it's clearly something Liverpool are looking at and believe is a need in their squad. But the question this summer, as is the case the last two summers when they missed out on two big names, is there going to be someone there who they think is good enough and really raises the ceiling? That's the huge question around it. Not whether they want, it's whether they think that the player is. All those departments in the transfer recruitment department agree that this guy's a game changer, and that for me is the big question around the number 6 position. Not kind of if they want to or they don't think it's an issue. It's if they can find the right player. So we'll have to see.
Is there anybody in your own view that you'd like to see in that position? For me, I love Ederson. I've been a big fan and cheerleader of that idea all the way through. I've never really believed the Koopmeiners link for various reasons, not the right type. I've seen Juventus's interest there. The numbers involved seem a little bit high. So for you, if you were playing fantasy managers, is there anyone you'd like to see Liverpool look at in that position?
Honestly, I always say this. I'm definitely not a scout. I don't know enough about world football. I very sort of watch Liverpool very closely, and I do watch a lot of football from around the world. But I wouldn't have myself down as a scout. I mean, the one thing I would say is that Caicedo would have been fantastic, particularly if they sort of end up in. I know Slot calls it a 4-3-3, but it does work as a double pivot sometimes. And I think Caicedo in that setup would have been really, really perfect. And again, I look at Tchouaméni and think every time I see him for Real Madrid, I think, and also with Tchouaméni, I almost think he could be a bigger star at Liverpool. He would be more important to Liverpool than he maybe is to Real Madrid. So, maybe there's a sniff that at some point in the next couple of years he becomes available. But outside of that, I can't say, honestly. I know enough about players to maybe say I'm definitely more of a journalist than a football scout, that's for sure.
So Barry wants to know, have you heard anything on the Queeving Kelleher situation?
Yeah, nothing yet. Again, this is one of those where we think, I think we all reported at the start of the summer that very much Liverpool would do business. There is a figure there which is sort of around 25 million that would bring them to the table for Queeving, and I think that is the right kind of fee for a player of his quality and experience. But like with everything else, like with the Luis Diaz thing, no firm approaches yet. Again, I suppose when we talk about Richard Hughes saying, that look, things are going to explode in terms of what's happening at the end of the window. He's not just talking about Liverpool, is he? He's talking about other clubs and their business as well in terms of the incomings they're doing. So that has a knock-on effect on Liverpool in terms of outgoings. So, I'm sure a goalkeeper might be something that Liverpool end up in the market for this summer. But the key is, whether Queeving moves. And at the moment, there's been no firm approaches, no bids coming in just yet as we're speaking now. So, nothing to report on that, but that's one to kind of keep an eye on and see whether anything does move. But again, maybe we'll be waiting till August for anything to kind of move on that one.
Liz asked a double questions. He said, Kubo, is there any truth to those links? And secondly, a lot of our viewers believe that we probably haven't heard the end of Liverpool and Anthony Gordon. Would you say that this could be revisited at some point down the line? You highlighted as an example, Dave, the contractual situation for Anthony Gordon when Newcastle brought him in, and that's been playing in my mind quite a bit.
Yeah. So Kubo again got very cold reception on this one when I checked him with kind of sources at Liverpool. Doesn't look to me like he's going to be a target, or certainly there's absolutely no truth to those reports that a deal's close to being agreed or anything like that. I mean, maybe a player that Liverpool have looked at, but absolutely no truth that a deal is close. So I think take those ones with a pinch of salt, and maybe not one I expect to end up at Liverpool this summer. And on Anthony Gordon, yeah, I think I've said it before. I think that's one that has a real chance of being revived maybe later in the window because that contract situation is there. that leaves Newcastle in a weak position in terms of negotiating, even though they've got past all the PSR trouble that they've got. The player absolutely would desperately love to play for Liverpool, and there's all that reported interest in Luis Diaz now. Again, like with Quavine, that interest has to become something. We can't just keep talking about it. There has to be a bid come in, and it has to be right for Liverpool for a sale. They're not going to just kick him out the door. But if that does come together and those ingredients are there, I think Anthony Gordon is a player that we know they admire. Absolutely no doubt about that. And we understand that his contract is with just 2 years remaining. I think they would sense Newcastle's weakness there, and very much go to test it. That's my belief.
Has there been any renewed interest that you've heard in Lucho? So obviously Barcelona was a name his father mentioned previously as a club he loved growing up. We know Barcelona seemingly are looking at Nico Williams or Dani Olmo as possibilities. PSG are the only real other club I could think of that might have the 75 million pound that Liverpool would probably look for. Have you heard any other clubs that you've seen sniffing around Lucho?
No, just those two at the moment. And again, even that is very, very tentative interest. As soon as a firm offer comes in or there's any real approach, I'd absolutely report it. But it's just quiet at the moment. There's nothing happening with that. And I think there's kind of an assumption sometimes that, again, I always say it, that, something gets reported like that it's a possibility. Liverpool would maybe consider offers for Luis Diaz, and people think, yeah, he's out the door, he's gone. But it has to materialise. That the money has to be there, and the money has to be something that Liverpool find acceptable as well. They're not just going to let him go for 35 million because Barca have got kind of financial worries and they want to get rid of the player. It's nothing like that. I think very much Arne Slot would be excited to work with him. He's not a poor player, contrary to some belief. I think he's a big talent. He could maybe squeeze a bit more out of in terms of maybe goals and assists this season, possibly. So they're not kicking him out the door. So until that kind of turns into anything more, and Barca come with a bid, or PSG, or maybe any other club from anywhere else actually comes up with the money, then it's not really kind of a topic for discussion, really, as far as Liverpool are concerned.
So I've often daydreamed, David, about going back to be able to buy those 86, 88, 1990 Adidas Liverpool shirts with the Adidas badge on them. We've heard some murmurings of Adidas maybe being Liverpool's kit manufacturers moving forward. Is there any credibility to that?
Yeah, I absolutely expect that to happen. Yeah, I believe Adidas will be Liverpool's next shirt sponsor. Yeah, I'm not sure how it went with Nike. For me, I thought with the Nike stuff, just my personal opinion, I thought some really nice shirts in there, but I always kind of see Liverpool as more of an Adidas club, if I'm honest. So I'm kind of happy about that Adidas will be Liverpool's next sponsors. And yeah, it just feels a little bit more right and a bit more like a bit of a homecoming, really. So, and as you say, some of the retro stuff as well would be absolutely fantastic as well. So yeah, that's my understanding, that Adidas will be the ones coming in to replace Nike.
It used to make me so sad when I went to Liverpool One and I seen the Everton store next door and the old Umbro kits that they could buy, the replica ones with the from the 80s and 70s and stuff. It always made me very jealous thinking of those Adidas kits. So like yourself, I am hoping that's the case. David, I know you're a busy man. Have you anything on your Substack or on your YouTube channel that you've got coming up you'd like people to know about?
Yeah, kind of quiet on the YouTube at the moment, if I'm honest, because the transfer stuff. But hopefully, we're looking at a busy August. So, if you want to find me on YouTube at David Lynch LFC, and obviously, yeah, if anyone could subscribe to Substack, obviously massively helpful, because all my written stuff, including, for example, I got the exclusive the other day about the friendly against Preston. So, all my news updates will be on there, and all the stuff around transfers as well and contracts. So, yeah, worth looking up if you can. You can obviously find that on my Twitter.
David Lynch, always a gentleman, always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.